folks, and then we're going to get into the body of this in a moment. We're just a minute in, and yeah, so we're starting to collect a number of viewers. So okay. We'll do an official start now. So good evening, everybody. I'm Geordie McConnell, the head coach of Ottawa Swimming, and joining, hold it, I got to get it right, over this way. No, this way. That guy is Dr. Garrett de Jong of the Movement Company and of Mile to Marathon Running. Good evening, Garrett.
Hey, Geordie. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see your face and to hear your voice.
I think I probably should have maybe trimmed the beard a little bit, or I don't know, gotten a haircut, but I'm letting it all go.
Dude, I thought this was like the end of beards, that, you know, speaking moistly and everything. You don't want to have a moist catcher around the mouth, do you?
No, that's true. Anyway, I'm still healthy. So.
All right. Garrett, I want to start tonight by asking you. So Garrett is a former, well, not former, he's an elite runner and former elite triathlete. And I want to ask you about what goals, we touched on it in our personal conversation, but a lot of people, so I'm speaking to the athlete and running coach right now. Everyone has had to release all of their goals. I was just talking about how my decathlon is not on now, and your 10K national championships aren't on now. What do we do with that, Garrett? What do we do with no goals?
Well, we freak out for maybe a day, and then we sit down and we breathe and realize that this is a great opportunity to go back to our roots and to really innately enjoy our sport. You know, it forced us to focus on the process with no outcome, and this is stuff we say all the time, even when there is a race and it's funny, or a goal, and it's funny, and now we're forced to have no outcome and have no goal, so we have no choice but to appreciate that the process, and just and you know, if you don't truly enjoy your sport, you're never going to truly reach your potential either, because it's not, you know, the best in the world love what they do. The best example is Usain Bolt. You know, look at how happy he was at the start of races when he's supposed to be his most nervous, and you know, he's got the loftiest goal in the world of winning not only one gold medal but multiple gold medals. He is just there having fun. And we just have to remind ourselves, you know, we got to enjoy the process. And it doesn't, for runners and endurance athletes, doesn't mean you have to enjoy going out there and running. And like, you don't have to enjoy the entire long run, but you have to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the struggle, right? So now we have no choice.
Garrett, speaking of the best in the world, do you want to introduce your friend that's sitting behind you?
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, I have a GQ model and world marathon world record holder Eliud Kipchoge, fresh from his GQ photo shoot. So he'll just hanging out. He's just we've been hanging out all week, yeah, I just got his feet up. Even the best in the world, they have to rest from time to time. So,
Garrett, I think his neck's going to need a little bit of a release after sitting for an hour looking over his left shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm here.
Meanwhile, as I said to Garrett, I've decided to go to the track because I miss it a lot, and I had to stare down some hurdles, because if I don't get that stare down in my head every once in a while, I think the hurdles might start to scare me a little bit. But
you know, that there's a lot to be said about imagery of our sport too. So yeah, I
gotta start staring at the pole vault runway, because that's the scariest one of all.
Oh God.
I'm gonna throw Garrett some some single words at you that are going to equate to things you've actually talked about on social media recently. Actually, this first one's not going to be a single word, and I talk to members about this if they ever bring to me any muscular issues. But talk about the relativity of an injury, injury to one area of function in the body, and how that relates to the whole kinetic chain going usually up the body, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. We love to have a reductionist view of our bodies. Medicine is really good in that reductionist view, and you know, when you break a bone and you fix that bone, and when there's, you know, surgeries are really good at doing what they do for these acute, you know, traumatic injuries. But there's a problem, there's a disconnect when it becomes more of a chronic injury, or even just like a repetitive strain injury, or, you know, like the common sports injuries. But actually, even I'll explain how that even there's even acute injuries can have an underlying or more global root cause. So you know, we're an assembly of parts, or sorry, we're not an assembly of parts. We're one fluid system, right? If you we're not like a car. So if a car has a flat tire, you're only getting so far before you can't drive the car anymore. Meanwhile, I have a neighbor who's got a three-legged dog that it lives just fine, and it's amazing that compensated. So we're more than that assembly of parts. So I can go on and on about this, Geordie, but
give us an example of a classic injury.
Yeah.
Whose the source of the injury is, relatively speaking, quite far away in our body.
Yeah. So again, if we look at a knee is probably the classic example. The knee joint is directly related to things above and below. When I see someone with a knee issue, or a painful knee, I shouldn't say knee issue, but a painful knee, oftentimes, and a high percentage of the time, 95% maybe, the knee is not the problem. The knee is where is compensating for things beyond it. And if it's a right knee, I'm always looking at what's the other leg doing. And then I'm also looking at the more direct things, so the ankle and the hip. So if the ankle's not moving well, the knee's going to compensate. And the hip's not working well, again, the knee can compensate. So you can look at the more direct joints, but then even that, it's not just the left side, it's freaking everything. So not that it's complex, because sometimes I say that and people are like overwhelmed, like, oh, I got to look at everything. No, it's actually so actually it is complex, but it's not complicated, because the solution is simple. The solution is full body approach, right? It's you know, the body's very good at, if you need to compensate short term, your body will kind of offload that joint. But a full body approach is what we need to do. If the knee was weak itself, and if that's an issue, even that, we can't just simply say, I got to strengthen that knee or the quads or whatever. You have to investigate, why was that knee weak to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. So why don't you use that side? And that could be a left foot issue. So injuries, I get excited when when I get injured. Well, not really, but like it's an opportunity.
You know what, Garrett, our jobs are similar in a way. I stand at a pool, on a pool deck on a non-pandemic day, and the thing that stimulates me the most, certainly working with learners and looking at their mobility circumstances and trying to fit a technique to them, not them into a technique, right? So And it's that trial and error. You're doing it on a much deeper level. And another thought I had about my own situation, you talk about the kinetic change, is, I have, like many people, a leg length discrepancy slightly, because I broke my right leg when I was a kid. But when my back is off, like I've seen pictures of myself where my jaw lays slightly to the side, and it was explained to me, it goes all the way down, everything compensates, and that jaw kicks over a little bit if the whole spine's off balance, right?
Yep.
Question, or the second topic I want you to touch on. Now, I was speaking to an athlete a few days ago, and she was asking for some training plan tips, coming back from an injury. She wasn't sure why she injured herself. And I asked her to explain what she was doing. And I leaned forward and I said, okay, say it with me. You did too much.
Too soon.
Right?
Yeah.
So Garrett, talk to me about what is too much. Talk to me about 10%, the 10%.
Yeah. So too much too soon can, I have a post on that on Instagram and Facebook, and I definitely, I think I thought of you as soon as I posted it, because I think you were probably one of the first person that mentioned that back in my early triathlon days when I was banged up a lot. But too much too soon. Yeah, it's the body kind of gets used to it's whatever it's doing, right? So any change, and especially if it's too much too soon, you're not going to be ready for that. So there's a threshold that the body can deal with, right? So too much too soon can obviously mean volume and intensity. Those are the most basic ones, simple ones. But then too much too soon can also mean too much too soon in a new shoe, right? Any new stimulus. And then so not just the load, but also things that lower our threshold. So general life stress can lower that threshold. So right now, for example, people are just anxious about just what's going on and with the pandemic. So you might need to adjust your training, because the body, when it's stressed, what happens is the whole system is on high alert. So we're more prone, we're more sensitized to little things, and that's an advantage and an evolutionary advantage, because if we're stressed, you want to be more sensitive. If you're under threat, you want to be more sensitive, so your body can react. So pain is kind of an alarm system. So if there's just general life stress, that too much too soon is going to be a lot lower. The general 10% rule helps sometimes, but it's very general. The recent suggestion, I guess, would be what we call an acute to chronic ratio, and that it helps you understand the too much too soon concept a little bit better. So the acute to chronic stress, or acute to chronic workload ratio, basically it looks at the work that you've done the past 4 weeks, and it compares that to your previous week. So if the most recent week was above and beyond more than your chronic workload, you're at a higher risk of injury. But funny enough, there's also, if you do too little, there's an increase of risk injury there. But even that, so that's it only looks at one factor, which is volume. It can't really consider intensity and obviously all the other life factors. Gwen Jorgensen, the triathlete, talks about, and she runs for Bowerman Track Club now. They do Jerry miles, and that's kind of an interesting concept where every for her, every 8 minutes of easy run-in equals 1 mile, so that she doesn't use the GPS. She just does 8 minutes. So that way, if she can go as slow as she wants to, and she can just go by feel. But then every workout mile, so if she's doing a tempo workout, she counts those miles as legit miles. So then that kind of gives her a little bit more of an accurate representation of effort and load over the week. But like Training Peaks tries to do that with like this RSS score. But there's so many things out there. Anyway.
And you know, one of the things that and right from the get-go in this shutdown, that I tried to warn athletes about, and that I'm as a running coach, I'll be interested if you've shared the same message, is that, you know, here we are, we're suddenly have all of this time on our hands and all of this stress, and there is the temptation to pour a little too much time into training, either going too long, going too hard, and not trying to keep everything in balance. And, you know, there's obviously the injury risk is there, but, you know, endurance, long, hard workouts, you know, I'm not sure exactly what the science is. You might be able to correct me, but, you know, beyond 2 hours, 3 hours can inhibit the immune system. So have you talked to your athletes about, your runners about taking a sustainable approach and not going too crazy?
Yeah. You know, the whole immune system thing was a blessing in disguise too, especially when the fear was high. Like I can definitely tell you for sure, myself and many of my athletes have gotten sick not long after a long run or a hard workout. So with everyone kind of being fearful of our immune systems, now we're forced to train smart. And it's funny, it takes a pandemic for us to realize this common sense thing where you shouldn't train to the point where you might get sick in a couple of days. But now it's real. And yes, we have talked about it and it's funny how everything kind of relates, you know, when you focus on the process and you're more kind of mindful of your own run-in, you just end up running the right intensity. Like your body just knows what's right for it.
It's a good journey, isn't it? It's a good journey to, you know, running just on perceived exertion. Like we say, no goals out there, just running regularly. And, you know, we have the incredible opportunity of, if we remain fit, if we remain uninjured, to by the summer, imagine if you don't race and you just train consistently with some recovery here and there, balance. Imagine how what incredible shape we're all going to be in running wise in August, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that, I mean, you brought something kind of came to mind when you were talking there, where everyone should, before we schedule a race, we should ask ourselves, would I be doing this if there was no race, if there was, you know, if there was no Ironman coming up, if there was no marathon? And if the answer is no, then maybe we should find something else. maybe we should, maybe we should just reevaluate what we're really doing, because we've all seen, you know, if sport brings conflict in your life, it's not worth it. And sport needs to be a positive stress, not a negative stress.
Yeah, Garrett, on the, you know, especially on the topic of running, you know, when I train people doing strength training, I always explain to them my philosophy is, as a coach, to give you a longer list of movement patterns to do, and thereby increasing your balance and your athleticism, as opposed to doing a short list with multiple sets of that short list. So a variety. But talk to me as a runner and a running coach about variability and how how can a runner mix it up out there in terms of surfaces, paces, etc.?
Yeah, no, that's great. Variability. So just general, like even before all of this, kind of a principle of my training plans are, start with variability, or build up the capacity to deal with variability, or deal with chaos, and then as you progress through a season, you if you want to get as fast as you possibly can, you're going to need to do the specific work of marathon pace stuff, or or the specific demands of your event. But it starts with that foundation, and variability is the foundation. Modern humans have so little variability in our lives compared to what our DNA is required, or what we've evolved to have or to deal with. So we kind of have to consciously try to expose ourselves to more variability, because if we don't, it's so easy to get by with, you wake up, you sit on a chair, you eat breakfast, you walk down, go to your car, you drive to work, you sit, you come home, you sit on your bike, or if even for runners who it's a very linear sport. If you're running on the treadmill, it's just your one direction, right? Sidewalks, everything is so flat. So
what's an example, Garrett? What would you say? Like, today I want you to go out there and in terms of variability.
Yeah, it could be anything, right? But if we're talking running specific, I don't know if I should say coin the term, but I've been telling people to do urban trail running. So I can't get to Gatineau Park right now. So urban trail running, where it's almost like a blend between actual running and parkour. So not as intense as that crazy parkour stuff, but purposely seeking, like being aware of your environment, which we should be doing. That's a natural thing that we should be doing, like just running and aimlessly listening to our headphones, or it's kind of nice, but we should also be, we're meant to be in our environment. So looking for, having fun with it, jumping on top of a bench as you're going for a run. One thing I do all the time, almost every run now, is on the sidewalks, I try not to hit any of the lines, right? And that just shifts my stride that much more. So I take short steps, and every now I'll do a long step. So you're like, hopscotch for adults, right? But yeah, just there's so many different ways you can get creative and get more variability in your day-to-day life. So less convenience goes a long way. Right now I'm not sitting on a chair, I'm sitting on the floor, just to kind of just get a little bit more hip mobility. You can get an extreme example is get rid of your couch, but I've told people, like, the most common dishes they use in the house, maybe put that on the highest shelf, as long as it's not fragile, so you're forced to reach, or on the lowest shelf, so you're forced to get a squat in, and then you kind of get a hidden strength and mobility session in throughout your day, as opposed to using the willpower every day to drag yourself to do a class or something, which it's still fun to do when it's at the OTC, obviously, but or just Ottawa Swim. But
Garrett, I talked a minute ago about leg length discrepancies. One of the first things I always do when I'm doing a webinar or talking to a group about mobility is I'll have them do a quick mobility check, and the vast majority of people will have an imbalance. And so on the topic of asymmetries, I think it is very common, isn't it? And it's not I won't necessarily say it's a bad thing. It's such a part of every athlete out there. So comment on asymmetries and what we can do with them.
So yeah, you gave me all these love balls here. I like it. All these, I love these questions. So asymmetries, it's part of nature, right? Like they're not a problem until they're a problem. So they can very much be a problem. You know, the physics of loading one joint more than another, loading a joint vulnerably versus not. You know, there's still stresses going through that joint more than other joints, and everyone has a threshold, right? So it's still potentially a problem, but the human body is not meant to be perfectly symmetrical. No one is. You know, a lot of perfectionists out there don't want to hear this, but not to say that you shouldn't work on imbalances, and you shouldn't just say, okay, my left leg is weak, I'm just, you know, that's the way it is, that's normal. No, we still have to do the very best we can to work on our imbalances and be as symmetrical as possible, but not being so anal about whether we're perfectly symmetrical left or right. Like, just imagine it, like, you're never going to be, if you're right-handed, you can work a lot on your left hand, but you're never going to be ambidextrous, right? So there's power in imbalances too. So there's a reason why we're imbalanced. There's a reason why we're better at kicking with our right leg and better at writing with our right hand. Neurologically, it takes way less energy to have a good side. Now, again, in our modern lifestyles, we're able to get away with these imbalances a little bit easier because, again, we're not challenging ourselves with variability. So our movement options are very limited. So we only have one way to move. So we need to start exposing ourselves to more movement, more variability in movement. And some people, you know, think they're moving a certain way, but they're not because of compensations. But anyway, we need to expose ourselves to different movement options, and our bodies will naturally gravitate to being as balanced as possible. We don't want to be imbalanced. We don't want to be imbalanced if it's a problem, right? So we don't want to expend more energy if we don't have to. So our bodies do want to gravitate to neutral. You know, neutral isn't a definite. It's kind of a relative thing. So we should be as neutral as possible.
So I'm just for everybody out there in YouTube land. My guest tonight is Dr. Garrett de Jong. He is a doctor of chiropractic. He works virtually right now. You can find him on Facebook. He's also works under normal circumstances at the Movement Company. Garrett is also a coach with Mile to Marathon. So I'm going to invite the YouTube audience. We're going to try to make this happen. I'll have to change screens here, but Garrett and I are going to keep talking for a minute or two or more.
Sure.
But if you have any questions, just put them in the chat portion on YouTube. And in a few minutes, I'm going to head on over there. And if there's any, I'll ask Garrett. But I get first go. So Garrett, here we go. The question everybody wants to know: what is the single most common injury that you treat in terms of athletic injuries? What would you say?
You know, so I'm gonna have to give you like a Garrett de Jong answer here, so you're basically asking for, or generally that question implies a diagnosis, right? So what's the most common diagnosis, and what is a diagnosis? A diagnosis is something that we've invented, like blanket terms. So, and everyone's a little different, right? so everyone wants the diagnosis. It helps. It it clarifies things potentially, but everyone's different. So everyone's knee issue is a little different. So even if you have a patella tendon issue, your patella tendon rehab and treatment plan and prognosis and risk factors, all that is very much different than someone else. So just I'm not going to give you a diagnosis because I honestly don't really use them. My diagnoses are like lower kinetic chain dysfunction and and the root cause to a lot of injuries are similar, but so I'll see someone's, for example, their foot might be dysfunctional, but they're not coming in for a foot problem. They think their foot problem is fine. They're coming in with a knee problem or an opposite hip problem, but all of that could potentially be related to that root cause of that dysfunctional foot that they don't even know is a problem. So the most common area I see that is in pain, I don't know, I'll probably like low backs are common, and the most common area that I see is dysfunctional. So it is feet. Yeah, people we've grown up wearing shoes and we've walked on sidewalks and flat surfaces our whole lives, and feet are our contact with the world most of the time. So that's usually the biggest problematic area.
Interesting. If you were to now, I'm gonna get myself in trouble again by asking you a simple question, but I know you're gonna,
no, it's good.
You're gonna give me an honest answer, which means that there's no simple answers. But if the athletic body has a weak point, give me if you were to re-engineer the human body, what two areas of the human body would you re-engineer because they cause dysfunction, or in modern society they are used in a manner that leads to dysfunction?
First of all, I probably wouldn't re-engineer the human body at all. My knowledge, my conscious knowledge, is not going to be better than millions of years of evolution. So with that said, the human body is just absolutely amazing. I continue to learn every single day about it. Year after year, I'm just blown away. And that will never end. I will die not knowing a fraction of the percentage of really how the human body works, but I continue to strive to try to get there and try. It's one of those things. The more you know, the more you don't know. But it's remarkable. Oftentimes people think their bodies are failing them. They feel like if my body would just not, be so broken all the time, I'd be able to do everything I want to. The body is on our side. The body is remarkable, and we got to give it a little bit more credit sometimes, because I've seen it so many times where it adapts. It's chronic pain for years and years just goes away when we compensate or when we injure something. The human body is brilliant at compensating. And it's absolutely amazing. Now to put an actual answer on your question, so what are two areas that would probably be re-engineered for, again, that modern human that hasn't had a lot of movement? What I would do is I wouldn't re-engineer it. I would just bring it back to its original state. That would be the foot, and then a lot of people would say the hips or the pelvis. But I would actually say, no, let's go with thoracic spine. So your thoracic spine is an area. So, and again, I'm kind of doing that on purpose. So hitting the areas above and below. So if we can get those areas to move more like they should move, what should happen is everything in between should just kind of fall into place. So, oftentimes I'll give someone a foot exercise and I'll just tell it's a foot exercise, but it's actually a glute exercise. It's a foot exercise to get your foot. It's a foot exercise to get your glute to fire automatically. So
that was a great answer, Garrett.
yeah.
I love it. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of when I often say, when I speak to groups, I often say that the average athlete would benefit much more by working with a psychologist than a physiologist.
That's how, like, I'm a chiropractor, but education is the most valuable thing I can probably offer. Yeah. Words.
Garrett, Joanne has been suffering from plantar fasciitis. Whenever anyone comes to me and says, I have this pain on the bottom of my foot, I purposefully give them as serious an expression as I can, because then I explain to them, look, plantar fasciitis, it can be a brutal injury because we can't walk on our hands. So total rest is virtually impossible. So if you were to, Joanne is doing some rolling with the tennis ball. What are some tips with regards to avoidance and rehab for plantar fasciitis?
Right. So plantar fasciitis is kind of funny because then it can happen to elite athletes. It can happen to sedentary people and everything in between. Generally, I would investigate. So, is it chronic? And if it is chronic, and a lot of plantar fasciitis is chronic, there's no way that it doesn't impact other areas of your life. So you kind of get into this potential chronic pain cycle, and you kind of have to break that cycle, and it's not easy, but there's a lot of factors that can go into pain. Lifestyle, are you sleeping well? Are you stressed with work? All that stuff I talked about is crucial, and that's the foundation. So there's no amount of active release therapy, Graston, acupuncture, whatever that's going to help if you don't have that foundation of health. So do the best you can at prioritizing your sleep. And honestly, I think sleep is a big one. But then sleep and then diet. But I find if your sleep is well, and then your diet kind of follows along with it. Because if you're eating an inflammatory diet, then again that can contribute to just inflammation in the body. So with that said, is why is your foot inflamed and not any other joint? So then we have to look at your foot mechanics, and then also the rest of the body too. So full body approach, simple as that. And then with tendons and plantar fasciitis, it's rest doesn't necessarily help. So Joanne has maybe taken time off of running or just tried to take, been off her feet for a while. Which intuitively feels good, and if this is an acute plantar fasciitis thing, then that's probably what you want to do, is lay off it for a couple of days to start. But I'm guessing that this is probably more of an ongoing thing. So what you actually have to do is you got to break that cycle, and you got to strengthen your foot along with the rest of the body. And so to do that, there's a lot of methods. I'm not going to really go through them all, but it's when you rest too much, your capacity, so when you rest too much, so if I like to do this kind of little example where if you put your two hands together, the top hand is basically your capacity for load, for your threshold of injury or whatever, and your bottom hand is your load. So the load is directly related to your capacity. So if you lay off your activity, it drops down here, right? So you're not loading nearly as much, but what ends up happening is they're kind of like a snake or accordion effect, well, your capacity now lowers, right? So if you try to go and do the things you once did, your capacity is down here, but then you're low, this back up here, then that's when you have that painful, that's where pain and comes in, where you're going over your threshold. So too much rest is never a good thing. But I can, if Joanne wants to reach out to me, I can give her some more specific things. But it's you have to take a full body approach, because Joanne can look online for plantar fasciitis treatment, and what worked for one person might not work for another, but it's worth a shot. But
and I think your guidance to take a holistic approach from nutrition through sleep to all of the muscles. You never know what could make a difference, right? Garrett, Jake has a question. Jake and I were talking about 80-20 and doing the majority of his running or his exercise at an aerobic pace, and after building a base, he's ready for some hard stuff. Jake's been doing some strength training with me, and his question was, he wants to do some heavy lifting, and he's not sure when to fit it in. But he posted I posted a second message, which was more succinct. He said, I have a 65-pound dumbbell. I want to use it. How can I use it? So Jake is a strong athlete. How can he fit in some heavier lifting into what is a triathlon training program, more or less, minus the swimming? But he's cycling a couple times, he's running a couple times, and he's doing strength a couple times. What about heavy lifting?
Heavy lifting is great, because heavy lifting is a component of kind of a healthy human ability, and it's again, if we start with that foundation of health, and then what's next is the foundation of movement, and then a foundation of just being a good athlete. So strength is going to be key there. And if a 65-pound dumbbell is awesome. Goblet squats are probably the safest thing you can do. You can do, that might be a little much for like a deadlift or something, but goblet squats are awesome. Like
farmer theory?
Yeah, for sure. Just lift heavy shit and put it back down and repeat. I would first start off with the foundational work. And I'm sure he's doing that. So making sure you've got the basic core strength, like the deep core strength, to make sure the hips are moving fairly well, and just like safety first, obviously. So a good way to do a goblet squat is have a chair behind you and raise it up, and just start with quarter squats and then slowly lower. Keep the weight really close to your body so you're not irritating your back. But the goblet squat is probably a great thing to do, and don't shy away from lifting heavy. So
great, thank you, Garrett. Well, thank you to everybody out there in YouTube land for watching this. I'm pretty sure this is going to end up to be automatically recorded on YouTube. But big thank you to Garrett. Did I look the right way? Yes, I did. And once again, Garrett, I'll let you say where we can find you in terms of your work and social media as well.
Yeah, a bunch of ways. So if this is on Facebook, just tag me and message my professional page, or personal page too, I guess. I don't know. On Instagram at Dr. Garrett de Jong. Twitter, I think it's just Garrett de Jong. I'm at the Movement Company. Right now I'm doing virtual calls, they've actually been going fantastic, because we talk a lot about this stuff and get people to do their active care, which is so valuable. So those have been really, really fun and successful so far. And if people are interested in that, just an email is probably the best. At basically, I don't know, I've got a few different emails. Garrett at the mvmtcompany.com. But yeah, reach out anyway. Probably a simple Google search.
I'll add some stuff to the description. I think I can do that afterwards. All right, Garrett, it was fantastic to see you, my friend. And
Yes, thanks.
wishing you all the best as you and your team and your family navigate these interesting times we live in.
Yes,
So,
like we were talking, this is just an opportunity, like a lot of things. And thanks so much for having me, Geordie. This was fun. Even if no one was listening, I had a great time.
now we had a good crowd, and I'm going to let you go now because I think Kipchoge needs a little bit of release on his neck. All right.
Good.
All right. Good night. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.